US car buyers are increasingly looking to hybrids as sales of electric vehicles pull back. Hybrids now make up more than 9% of new light vehicle registrations. That's according to the S&P Global Mobility Report. Now, Ford CEO Jim Farley is saying that hybrids will play an increasingly important role in the transition for consumers to go fully electric. On the other hand, Toyota CEO is predicting that pure EVs will peak at 30%, leaving a large space for hybrid cars. Let's bring in our next guest, Michael Dunne, Dunne Insights CEO, to discuss more. Thank you for joining us, Michael. So what do you think is going to be the key three factors that will drive hybrid conversion and adoption?
What we're seeing right now is the end of the honeymoon for pure electric vehicles. You know, for the last couple of years, there's been sensational interest in buying electrics like Teslas or your Mach-E's from Ford or your Hyundai Ioniq 5. But what's happened is that consumers have realized, hey, the charging infrastructure is not great on these things. They're expensive, and maybe there's a better alternative. So we're moving into more of a realistic, practical consumer. The first movers, the leaders who would go for those electrics are now moving to mass market. And those consumers are saying, give me something much more practical that I don't have to worry about range or charging. And their solution is to move, exactly as you said, into hybrids. We're seeing a surge in demand for hybrids while demand for pure electric vehicles is slowing.
Michael, it feels weird to talk about hybrids having a moment because they have been around for a while. And you look at a company like Toyota, who for years have said this very issue, that EVs are going to be slow in terms of adoption. Hybrids will be a longer bridge than you expect. How long does that transition look like for you? I mean, does it make sense for a company like GM, for example, to suddenly pivot to hybrids when you consider where the overall EV transition is going?
Absolutely. It's a longer run than most people expected. So we're talking about a 10-year transition before electrics. In Toyota's case, as you said, just 30% of the market. Others are more optimistic. But what's happening around the world is that people are realizing range anxiety is real. Charging infrastructure is not that great, especially here in North America. Prices of electrics remain high. So why don't I just buy a hybrid or a plug-in hybrid? I get something more affordable. I don't have to stress about range, and I can get in. There's a lot of options out there from Toyota, from Ford, from even Chinese companies like BYD. There's definitely competition now in the minds of consumers. Hey, I don't necessarily have to jump to pure electric. I can do very well with a hybrid.
Michael, is this a U.S.-specific story? Are you seeing the sales of EVs stall out in places like Europe, for example, or especially in China, where the infrastructure is much better and the access to those chargers are better?
Highly uneven. You're exactly right. The picture is highly uneven. In China, 1/3 of new car sales are electrics, in large part because the infrastructure in China is second to none. It's superb. Now, in Europe, what we've seen is as incentives in places like Germany have gone away, demand for electrics have more or less collapsed. So it is a geographical story. And here in the United States, because we love our big vehicles that are heavy, we love to travel at high speeds on the highways, those are behaviors that are much better suited to gasoline or hybrids than to electrics. A pure electric battery does not like to power a heavy vehicle at high speeds on mountains in cold weather. It's just not suited for that. So in a way, there's some American exceptionalism going on here, where hybrids and plug-in hybrids make a lot more sense in many cases than pure electrics.
And Michael, as you're mentioning the different categories of hybrids, because not everyone is familiar with them. You have the mild plug-in, your traditional plug-in as well. What do people need to know about the demand for those, and also the pricing? Because usually when you think about a car, it's the repairs, it's the insurance, and being able to resell it.
Right now, pure battery electric vehicles are the most expensive as a group on the market, right around $50,000 on average. When you step into plug-in hybrids or hybrid vehicles, gosh, those can start with a Prius in the high 20s, and you're getting tremendous gas mileage. So there is a gap. Think in simple terms, pure battery electrics are fantastic, fun vehicles like your Teslas, but they're expensive and you need charging. The plug-in hybrids and the hybrids, your range anxiety goes away because you have the engine to power the cars.
Michael, let's talk about battery electric EVs, because I mean, at the end of the day, that transition is happening, even if the pace of the transition is slowing. So much of the battle between the US players, particularly, and the Chinese players have been happening in China, the world's largest EV market. Something caught my eye earlier this year when you put out a prediction that suggested that fight is going to shift over to North America. Talk to me about what you're seeing there, and how long until a company like BYD, for example, you think actually gains access into the US at a much cheaper price point?
You're exactly right. What we're seeing inside China is that as the economy slows, they have massive overcapacity, up to 10 million units of overcapacity. So all automakers in China are now setting their sights on global markets, pushing out to anywhere they can sell their cars outside of China. Last year, China surpassed Japan as the #1 exporter of vehicles globally, and they're just getting started. Companies like BYD and others definitely have their sights set on Europe, where they're already moving in, and on the United States. Now, here in the US, there's this thing called a 27.5% import duty that has really stalled the Chinese advance when it comes to the American market. But there's no question that Chinese automakers need access to Europe, the United States, and other global markets, drowning in overcapacity with price wars and no margins. So it's really the trend for the next 5 years that competition will move outside of China into global markets, and it's happening now as we speak.
Interesting to see that shift playing out. Michael Dunne, Dunne Insights CEO. Good to talk to you today. Appreciate the time.
Thank you.